when everybody knew that Bernie was being completely shafted by the party, I saw it everywhere. So when people talk about how was the election rigged, how much time do you have? Because I can rattle off. It could take me a day to go through
from
all
top
of it.
to bottom, like all
just
over.
Just the simple example of when he lost the state of Missouri. They got caught in St. Louis doing electioneering all over the place, all over, handing out illegal pamphlets on behalf of the party, telling people to go vote for Hillary Clinton. That's one example, and that's election rigging. But what I thought was a classic example of what ultimately benefited Trump the most was the fact that the RNC was, obviously they're not as manipulative as the DNC is, but they themselves were trying to either put Rubio or Kasich at the head of the table and basically say, we're going to push Trump to the side. And Trump came up and he said, if you do this to me, let me tell you, I am totally going to drop out. I'm going to run as an independent and I will totally screw you. And that's what he did. And they all backed off. They all said, well, you know what? I guess he's got us by our ball sacks, so we got to go with what he wants.
You had to say that.
Because that's what ultimately it takes. There's a reason why, even now, we look back at why there were so many ardent defenders of Cuomo. People like politicians with balls. Like, that's just the way it is. And it's the same thing with DeSantis. And Trump was like, I'm going to take him on. And they love that. And Bernie was not willing to go there. He was not willing to say, if you keep not being nice to me, I'm going to tell you right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the Democratic Party and then I'm going to run in the Green Party. And that's what I'm going to do. And if he had done that, who knows what would have happened? They were screwing him anyway, but at least have the wherewithal to say, I'm not going to take this.
I'm taking my people and we're hitting the road.
I'm not taking this lying down. And you'd have to think, if Bernie had chosen to go that path, even if he was only threatening to do it, who knows what might have happened? The corporate media would have come down on him like an avalanche. You would have had every normie privileged Dem in the suburbs saying, we didn't want that SOB in our party anyway. He's not a real Democrat, blah, blah, blah. You can run and do whatever you want. It'll be your fault that we lose.
No, it's Jill Stein.
But ultimately, it could have created this whole new movement into a new party. And I think whoever is going to take the reins of the progressive movement, of Bernie's movement, if they were to run as a Democrat in the next election, I think that that's the next element, that the next evolution that needs to happen. This idea of, I'm going to run in your party, but you're going to play nice. And if you don't play nice, I am going to destroy your party. And to me, I think that that's the next evolution. Do you see that as a distinct possibility? And do you agree with the notion that one of the reasons Trump won is because he was willing to go to take that next step that perhaps Bernie should have taken but wasn't willing to take?
So I think that part, definitely makes a lot of sense to me. I mentioned that the one lesson that Democrats have been willing to learn, or at least like kind of admit that they've learned, is that after the 70s, we're never going to back a left candidate or a progressive candidate ever again, and they've been basically riding that train to present day, right? They still talk about it. These like you have people bringing on, shit, what the hell's that guy's name? Who's the Raging Cajun guy, the Clinton guy?
Carville.
I'm talking to it's 2 a.m. in Moscow right now. Hello, Vlad. It's like, God damn it.
He's horrible.
You put this skeleton.
He's a caricature. He's a caricature.
And let me tell you something, Max. If you have ever seen, and this is another example, Carville is the Democrat and Mary is the Republican, and they play off each other in D.C.
They're so
If
gross.
you saw the monstrosity of the townhouse that they have right on the Potomac in Alexandria, it's like, that stuff don't pay for itself. You got to grift real hard in order to keep a waterfront property like that.
That's a dual income grift.
That's for sure.
It is. I mean, this is what kind of blows me away, right? Is because it's from people like Carville who say, it's like, look, we ran McGovern in like 72. We got waxed. We can never make that mistake again. And yet I'm like, but you'll keep making a million other mistakes every single election and you'll never learn from them. Right. And that's what set us up for, 2016 is like a lot of people kept saying, it's like, look, yes, there are a lot of like complex issues here that have built up this sort of animosity towards Hillary Clinton specifically and the Clinton dynasty itself as a representative of everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party. Again, in true Democratic fashion, they approach that with, well, it's just the voters who were wrong, right? They have the wrong mentality about this, and they need to shut up, realize that we're what's good for them. And if Trump wins, then essentially we're going to be able to always point to them and say, see, you idiots should have listened to us. Whereas again, this is all just like it's a shadow game being played over our heads, where it's like for voters, it's not about who wins, like in which party gets to kind of claim a moral victory. We're talking about our lives here. We're talking about our ability to live on a planet that hasn't been destroyed. We're talking about the ability to safeguard rights to abortion, gay marriage, the ability for people to make a living wage in this country, to actually not have their futures crushed by student debt, right? Like these are the stakes of what we're talking about. But for people like James Carville and for people at the kind of top of the Democratic Party apparatus, it's all just horse betting, right? I mean, like, and that's, I think, the thing that is driving us all nuts here. But like, if they really do show their hand when they trot out folks like Carville, who has been wrong about so many things for so long and so many times in my lifetime, but they bring him up like he's this he was right about basically one thing in like the early 90s, and now they bring him out like he was like this political guru, and I'm just like, again, it's very selective what lessons the Democrats will actually learn from. Everything else they will keep running themselves straight into a wall. The point is that all of us are going to be the ones who suffer from that. And I think that, again, the question of a third political party it's always tough, because I think, again, the lesson, I guess the McGovern type lesson that Republicans learned in the 90s was we cannot allow someone like Ross Perot to, run an independent campaign, not because we think they're going to win, but because they're going to take enough votes away from us for the Democrats to win. So like that, the Ross Perot is basically the McGovern, Ross Perot is to the Republicans what McGovern is to the Democrats in a lot of ways. And so I do agree with you that that was one of the guns that Trump was able to hold to the party's head when he threatened to do that. I think in Trump's mind, he may have been like, I'm going to do this and win without you. For the Republicans, they're like, well, this is going to mean that the Democrats are going to win. Right. Not that either of us is going to win, but, there are certain sort of differences in the Democratic and Republican Party apparatus, as y'all know all too well. When you have aces in the hole like Wasserman Schultz that you can kind of call in, when you have, all that sort of backroom dealing that can essentially ensure that no matter what happens, the candidate that you want in there is going to be the one who gets through, regardless of what the voters are telling you. Then
super delegates.
You're super
delegates. Yes, you're a super delegate. You're not just a delegate. You're a super.
You have to. And again, I always felt that this was always Bernie's biggest flaw, is the fact that he is a political lifer in DC and he overthought the whole circumstance. It's like, no, you really, you understand what's going on here, and you have to stop worrying about what the GOP might do. It's either a bullet to the head or death by 1,000 paper cuts. You make the decision as to how you want this to happen, because either way, the Band-Aid's got to get ripped off. It just has to. We are a completely corporate captured government. We are. Mm-hmm. And to deny that that's where we are today is to delay the inevitable, because the working class will unite. It just needs the right leaders. It's not one person, but the right type of movement that can get it done.
And they need to stop fixating on divisive issues, which is what they're trying to do, and realize that if you're not in charge, you're one of us. So we're all on the same team except for the people that are in charge.
And I really think the opportunity—
it's not a red-blue thing.
Yeah, this is like I really think if we start planning right now, like there really is an opportunity in 24 because it's going to be Trump or DeSantis. It's pretty clear that that's what's
You mean
coming.
you don't think it's going to be a Kamala Pete victory?
If that is
Stop trying to make Kamala and Pete happen. It's not. People hate them.
But the establishment.
But that's all they have.
But that's what they're going to do. So if the establishment is already saying that we are literally going to put up.
They're like, we got Mayo Pete. He's sitting in the corner. He's ready to go. We've been grooming him as a Manchurian for years. He's ready to go.
But this is like the last remnants of the corporatocracy in the sense that they really think that they're going to hoodwink people this time. It's not going to happen, especially because Pete never really had the opportunity to see what a sniveling little weasel he is. I mean, they learned in Iowa with what he did, but it didn't expand far enough. And if they're really going to try to put this guy at the front of the line, it's almost as if to say, wow, there's like a wide open opportunity here for a non-corporate person to step forward. Who could that be? I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think we have to consider the element that maybe it has to be a Trump-like situation where the leader of the progressive movement has to be somebody who's not already elected on Capitol Hill. It has to be somebody who comes from the outside. Do you think that that's how it's going to have to be? I mean, there's really not that many people that I could think of. Obviously, if he was more progressive, you would have somebody like an Andrew Yang, but there's obviously also Marianne Williamson and Nina Turner in particular.
Marianne was on before. Marianne was on the thread before.
So I think that that's kind of, we talked about this whole idea that they have to like sort of coalesce together. Yeah. And I do think that that is how it's going to have to happen.
It's not going to be Pete. That's not happening.
No matter what happens, even if he's somehow the nominee, that's a 35-40 state victory for the GOP.
I just had to say, when I look at Kamala and Pete, and to me, it's one person. It's Team Clinton, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. When I look at that, they're like trying to green eggs and ham us, right? Like if they follow us around enough, we'll finally taste it and be like, oh, okay. if they just morph that into the right identity and they just get the right message and they put her in the right place with the right heels, but it's not going to happen. This isn't a green eggs and ham thing where at the end we're all going to go, oh yes, we do like Pete and Kamala. No, that's not going to happen.
No, it tastes like ish. It is ish.
Yeah. The reality is they're going to lose. They're going to lose. So there is an opportunity for someone who isn't them to do what Trump did on that side. There is an opportunity because you can look at Kamala and Pete like Cruz and whoever and Rubio and say, oh, someone came along because they weren't really palatable. And that's what we need.
And that non-corporate person can easily appeal to those normie, privileged, Dem, suburbanite base and tell them, you already know what Trump is like, and you know that his acolyte is the only other option. This is what's coming. And I guarantee you, if you nominate Pete or Kamala or both, they're getting back in the White House. So you better consider going in another path. And they have to have the balls to say that.
We need someone.
That's what's coming.
We need someone.
Help us, Superman.
Well, this is, it's funny just to think, Jen, about the ways that they're trying to plant the seed of Kamala and Buttigieg. It reminds me of I grew up on Seinfeld, right? So it reminds me of the Seinfeld episode where George is like, my dating strategy, when you first meet me, you hate me. I'm annoying. But I get in your head like a commercial jingle. Costanza. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to do that with Pete and Kamala.
Yes.
It's just not going to happen, or at least for not for enough amount of people. But so here's what I would say about this is going back to the Trump question. Why did the RNC capitulate to Trump? There's a number of reasons, but the RNC capitulated to Trump not because they were just scared of Trump. They were scared, to bring up another movie or Hollywood reference. One of the best lines I think in all of Hollywood is from the movie Tombstone, right? Where you had
who's your Huckleberry?
Do it.
It's an incredible movie. My brothers and I watched it all the time, but there's an amazing line where Kurt Russell, Wyatt Earp's character, is finally kind of fighting back against the cowboys who are kind of hurting the town and the outlaws and stuff like that. And he says, you tell your people that I'm coming and hell's coming with me. That is what the RNC saw with Trump. It wasn't just him. They saw the people at his rallies. We remember, it's easy for us to forget because it's become normalized now. But when that rally was kind of happening in Chicago and you had people fighting in one of Trump's rallies and the rally got shut down, that terrified the hell out of the political establishment in Washington D.C. And so that's kind of what put the fear of God into a lot of them, and that's become a normalized part of our political system right now. I mean, like, these people, whether they be kind of Trump acolytes, whether they be trolls who are just on the internet, they really act as a sort of political force to upend the comfort of the people in DC, and that actually kind of scare them into thinking, all right, there's enough energy behind this or that candidate that if we spurn them, it's going to come back to bite us in the ass. And I mentioned that because that is what any Democratic challenger for the party needs to have, and right now does not have. And so this is where it connects to the point that I was making earlier about needing to build our political muscles in other realms outside of just electoral campaigns. Because if you have a more organized working class coalition that actually has seen, because it's organized, people have organized in their own workplaces, they have forced their bosses to capitulate to their demands, or they have gone to city council meetings and forced their local governments to listen to them. America is a place where your average working person has been so thoroughly disempowered over their entire lifetimes that they've almost forgotten that they have the ability to, change the world that they live in. We need to rebuild those atrophied muscles to remind ourselves that actually, when we, like Bernie always said, when we come together, when we have that solidarity, when we are acting in concert across the things that normally divide us to advocate for our actual needs, we are an unstoppable force. And so we have a long way to go till people first remind themselves that they have it within their power to make the world over again. As you guys just had Harvey K on, and he's always talking about Thomas Paine, that the famous words of Thomas Paine. We do have it within our power to make the world over again, but we need to actually build the muscles up to do it. We need to do the hard work of organizing and coming together and working out our differences, realizing who our real enemies are and who they aren't, right? And then in that process, sort of building up the kind of power that could be behind a challenger candidate. But that's not the only place that energy goes, I guess, is the caveat that I keep making. But if that coalition built up that sort of muscle, and you had a candidate who actually was bucking the party line, who actually was fighting for working people, and you got that coalition behind it, that may be enough to actually scare the Democratic establishment into capitulating a bit more. Right now, you do not have that. Right now, what you have is again a disempowered population that more or less sees the game of politics like the people on the ground in Tokyo watching Mothra and Godzilla go at it, right? I mean, like, that's basically where we are as a population when it comes to politics, is which monster do you want to root for, and just hope that they don't crush the building that you and your family are living in. Like, we need more than that. We need politicians to listen to us. Right now, they do not feel like they have to. And if we are going to actually make that happen and lead the way to what you're describing, an actual insurgency candidacy or an insurgency movement with enough teeth that it could be a credible threat in a third party, you need to have the people behind you. And we have a long way to go to build that up, but we also don't have much time to do it. So we need all of us to get serious, to stop playing these goddamn games like we were started this conversation talking about, where we're at each other's throats over this or that, bullshit. And we really need to actually recognize the stakes of what we're up against, and the stakes of not building that movement now, because the stakes are, frankly, the world that we live in, and the future that currently is being foreclosed at a rapid pace.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.